Good morning. A ProductIP Compliance Tuesday session. It's a little bit of a pressure cooker session. Today is about the impact on your business when the General Product Safety Regulation is going to replace the Product Safety Directive. What will be the impact? And before I go into that, I would like you to quickly join in on a quick Mentimeter poll that I just created to give you a little bit of an idea of with whom we are and where you are. You could scan the code or enter the code with your smartphone. It's anonymously, so you can participate in a few questions. If you would be so nice. I see the first people already logging in. Only one. We need a little bit more. We are with 55, so get your smartphone out and scan the code so we can participate. Then you have a little bit more idea with whom you are in this session, not as persons, but type of business and where we are standing. There we go. $17. We are with 59, so I think wait till we are with 30 people in the Mentimeter and then we go to the next slide. Just scan the code with your QR reader in your smartphone and then you can participate in a few questions on this topic. It's anonymously, don't be afraid. $33, cool. 35, okay, 62. People still joining in, welcome. If you haven't had the intro, we start with the keynote, but we'll start with a quick Mentimeter Q&A. If you could scan the QR code with your smartphone, then we'll go to the next slide. If the QR code is gone, you can go to menti.com and use the code. So, just a quick glance on the map. Where are you now? Drop a pin. If you are in the US, drop it left from the map. If you are somewhere in Asia, drop it to the right of the map. This is the English session, so I assume we are quite international. And I know there's someone in the Netherlands that prefer to join the English session as well. Welcome to all of you. You see, compliance is an international problem as such, or topic. Of course, the focus of ProductIP is mainly consumer products that end up in the EU or EEA, the countries that follow the EU, as well as the UK. But the user group of ProductIP is everywhere. So you can see we are quite internationally everywhere. So today, although it's about General Product Safety Directive becoming a regulation, and perhaps many of you assume, okay, this has to do with trading in non-harmonized goods. It is affecting many supply chain roles, and the supply chain roles have become more and more. We have different routes to market. Most people are in more than one role, and so I'm curious to learn in what roles you are. And although legislation doesn't mention non-EU roles, they are relevant in the supply chain cooperation as well. If you own a web shop yourself, you are an e-tailer as well. I know many of you sell via a web shop. You see this, so it's quite diverse. How do you deal with product compliance today? Are you doing it, what we call it, at ProductIP, we call it the traditional way. We have spreadsheets and emails and Google and well, great to see that there's ProductIP users as well. Thanks for that. I guess some others are relying on TICs, testing, inspection, and certification programs. So it's quite a mix. The ones that still use internal systems like spreadsheet, emails, and Google, I really recommend that you start to follow the Compliance Tuesday sessions of this year. There is a tremendous number of changes coming that will give you really headaches if you have information stored on your internal servers. So in that respect, given the fact that, and you will learn more, that the changes that will come are significant, would you be able to either deal with it internally with IT capacity or have budget to outsource it? Okay, let's see if by the end of the year the maybe becomes a no. That would be my guess. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Let's go to the presentation. A little bit about me and ProductIP. ProductIP is Product Information Platform. That's the IP. My name is Casper de Horst. I'm co-founder together with Maarten van der Dussen of ProductIP. We are currently a team of just a little bit over 60, international team, besides running the software as a service, web-based solution, ProductIP. We are also market leader in the checking of artwork on products. We don't make the artwork, we verify if content on it is complete, accurate, if it doesn't have any information that shouldn't be there. The other link to the IP is because we are a web-based solution and has an IP address. We support currently over 26,000 international users. You might have seen us in the press recently. ProductIP is already over 1 year a proud partner of skeleton athlete Kimberly Boss. Kimberly won a bronze medal on the Winter Olympics in Beijing, and she was a winner of the World Cup in the 2021-2022 season, runner-up in this season, European champion last year, and just second in the World Championships this year, second after 4 runs by 1/100th of a second. Yes, this is skeleton. You will get all the PDF of this presentation. You can click on the URLs when they are there, and you can join a skeleton athlete down Whistler track in Canada. Point of view video. I think you have a lot of respect for those athletes. Why Compliance Tuesday sessions at all? Well, if you don't understand the problem, it's very hard to work on the problem. And you cannot look from the problem just from outside in. You need to look inside out. And most of it you cannot only solve by yourself because you are part of a supply chain. That means sometimes you need to change your internal processes, your internal systems, agreements with suppliers. That goes the same for your suppliers when you are a European company. Your supplier somewhere in the Far East or in America, they have to change things to their suppliers. It doesn't just affect the compliance of products, it also involves extended producer responsibilities that has everything to do with recycling. So retailers, e-tailers, they are influenced as well. Part of solving the problem is understanding the problem. For this session, you've seen in the communication that we've used the word tsunami. Oh, Casper, isn't that a too strong word to be used for that? Well, I think you agree with me after a few slides that this was the right tone of voice, because what is going to happen, not just around this topic, because it's a layer of different legislations that will come towards the market and you will be confronted with, and some, will be irrelevant of products, because if it's about packaging, it will be relevant for everything. More than significant changes. I think the word of tsunami is really justified. Let me take you first to what we call Station Brussels. The EU is using the analogy of trains and train stations to visualize the process of making new legislation. So at the European legal train station, we currently have 6 main platforms, from European Green Deal to a new push for European democracy. Again, the URL to this is in the slides. There are some derailed legal trains, that is possible, but there is 583, you can calculate it later yourself at this moment, active legal trains, 583. They may or may not directly or indirectly impact manufacturing and trading of non-food consumer goods. obviously also other food goods or feed goods and other aspects with respect to finance and logistics. But this is the part that we also need to monitor. This is just part of what we are monitoring. ProductIP is not just software as a service. It comes with built-in regulatory information. And we monitor those legislative changes in Europe, member states, post-Brexit UK, which results in an average 400 updates a month of our regulatory database. But what is interesting, or maybe worrying, when you start to read the recently coming updates on legislation, is that this is no longer just about some standard will replace another standard, or some scope of legislation is changing involving other products in the scope. This is an overhaul. In many wording, the EU is now writing, we are no longer allowing voluntarily measurements. We really need, the market to start act and change. For us, it's an overhaul. For you, it's an overhaul. I think in order to survive your business, that's why we make a link to tsunami, you need to move to higher grounds, rethink your business, and avoid becoming a victim of this regulatory tsunami. The legislation that we are going to discuss today is in a new push for European democracy, which might be a surprise, but it is in this part mainly because it also has to do with rights for consumers. It is in expected arrivals. The General Product Safety Regulation train is almost due to arrive. That means that the text is finalized. There might be some last tweaks, but the EU Commission and Parliament are aligned. So we're waiting for this to be voted off, basically. Any of these trains has their own page. This is the train for this page for the General Product Safety Regulation, again with the URL. You can actually subscribe to such pages. You can follow it. You get notified when there are key changes, but being notified does not mean that you have implemented it. You need to read it and understand it, and then you need to start acting on it. This GPSD, this is the product safety framework in total. The GPSD is on the left side in a non-harmonized product side, but it is also in the harmonized product side. That is probably a surprise for many of you. The General Product Safety Directive, which will then become General Product Safety Regulation, is actually, you see it already, the GPSD as safety net. It's in both sides. It means the market surveillance authorities always win. So in case there's no other legislation covering the risk of this product that you have or an issue that you have with a product, they always can refer to GPSD/GPSR. Having said that, that means changes in the current GPSD will also affect harmonized products because it's an add-on to the 2019-1020 regulation, the market surveillance regulation, that is already modernized a few years ago and applicable for harmonized goods. Germany extended the scope of that to include non-harmonized products. So we guess that they will reverse that when the GPSR becomes live. Yeah. Directive versus regulation, for those who are not clear. A directive means that there is a European goal, but it is chiefly a national legislation. That can mean that the way a member state deals with it, member state A can deal it with a different way than member state B. But the regulation means one-on-one translated into national legislation. So the way the member states deal with it is the same. So why is change needed? We have laws, regulations, control, standards, policy, compliance. Why is this change now needed for this General Product Safety Directive? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, we altogether are not doing so well when we start to place products on the market. So market surveillance authorities are randomly checking products. And for those who have more insight on that, the number they check is actually very low, but still the results is very worrying and it's not getting better. So if they are randomly inspecting products, let's just open a container arriving in Rotterdam and see what's in there and inspect if it's compliant or not. It varies between certain product categories. Some product categories that are randomly found 16% is wrong, dangerous. 1% is at the low end, but the median, 4%. So across all the product categories, one could say 4% of the products is dangerous. That's way too many. It's getting worse because if they start to focus on certain product groups where they have a hunch that things could be wrong, the results are really shocking. Baby nest, bedside sleepers, sleeping bags, 90%. This is materials. These are certification issues, especially for children. But toasters, 38% tested unsafe. Toasters, that's a common product. We're making toasters for years. Or what about toys? Nitrosamines in toys. There's already a long time standing prohibition, a limit for those substances in toys. 14% non-compliance. If you calculate that into damages, then they find that the annual detriment for consumers due to unsafe products is 11.5 billion euros. This is not cost of recall, okay? This is cost for you and me. We pay this via insurance companies, premiums. We have damages to properties, damages to clothing. We cannot work. We have, loss of joy in life, time wasted to solve things, injuries. This is not cost of recalls. This should become cost of recalls. That's something else. Then GPSD is 20 years old. They had the intention to change it before, didn't work out, one of the derailed projects, and they started again. 20-year-old, what happened in the last 20 years? Okay, we have new supply chain rules. We need to take care of fulfillment service providers, like we do with the 2019-1020 regulation on harmonized goods. We have new aspects such as over-the-air software updates. Here you see it already, software updates. Non-harmonized goods like general merchandise, they don't have software updates. Probably harmonized goods like IT projects have software updates. Here you already see that GPSR will cover harmonized products. What about AI? What about connected products? What about robotics? What about people designing 3D parts? How are we going to deal with that if they influence the safety of a product that is already on the market? We also know that the old style, the current style of how we do recalls is very ineffective. Not only the way we are notifying consumers. There have been studies. When I will share this information, I will also add a report from the UK who studied how consumers are reacting to recall notifications. I think 1 of 10 recall products is just returned. Most, maybe me myself as well, are reading a message saying, okay, it might happen to dishwashers, but not to my dishwasher. So it has also to do with tone of voice. And do we see it? Is it visually in our face that there is something that we need to do? We also need to align the mandate for market surveillance with the EU 2019-1020. It cannot be that market surveillance authorities have 2 different instrument sets for harmonized and non-harmonized goods when doing market surveillance. Right? Makes sense. So dive into scope. They have written it in such a way that it includes everything. That's, of course, the obvious part if you write a regulation that also has market surveillance authorities as a relevant party in it. So this regulation not only arranges roles and responsibilities for the commercial side, but also for the market surveillance side. It's the complete playing ground. Products, actually, it means interconnected or not. So it can be a part or it can be a future part. You could supply it as a product or you could supply it as part of a service. So the service could influence the way people are using parts. So if you change the way people are using parts and this becomes a risk because you change the service, you can read it in many ways, but if you really read it, it says it covers everything. Conclusion is they write it in this way. Market surveillance authorities can always put things under their scope. So from that point of view, they have written it clearly. It is intended for products that are used by consumers, even if it was not intended to be used by consumers, but consumers start using it. Yeah, and that is in some products, it is like that. If you look what you can buy at DIY stores today, I think many of the machines there are professional machines in the meantime. Under reasonable foreseeable conditions. Okay, that makes also sense. But what is then safe? Because if this is going to arrange what you need to do when products are not safe, and that you need to do things to ensure that products are safe, you need to consider normal or reasonable foreseeable conditions of use. Now is something new. What they're writing down here is actual duration of use. And with that, they cover aging. The next two bullets, if you have followed some of the legal advisors on LinkedIn, this is where they are worried about, because it does not present any risk. I think zero risk is impossible, or only the minimum risk compatible with the product's use. Not present any risk is impossible for consumer products. So I think that is why the legal side of the European market is worried. And what is acceptable? It's not about safety only. Health is also written down, and health is safety in the long term. Yeah, so this ensures aging, chemicals, substances, not only direct but also indirect harming consumers in the long term. Very specific new chapter on software updates, because software updates may influence and modify the original product. So a software update need to be accompanied by a new risk assessment. It might even so that a software update could result in a new declaration of conformity. Yeah, so software update and a version, you could see it as a component, as a part number. Maybe we will result in a version of the product, not the product on the market if it's over-the-air update, but for sure in products that you will place on the market after that. But you need to do a risk assessment anyway. One of the examples is already in the Radio Equipment Directive, where you need to take into account with settings. You know, you have routers that have a 5 gigahertz transmission frequency band, which is close to the military radar band. And then there came suddenly in some routers a software update allowing consumers to increase the power in that frequency band, so you have a better connection reach over your house area, which was not allowed because you're increasing the wattage of transmission in the frequency band. Another example of how a software update can deal with compliance. New in the regulation is the supply chain role for fulfillment service provider, which is not new for us entirely because it already was mentioned in the 2019 1020. Yeah. What is a fulfillment service provider for those who haven't seen that before? Somebody that is doing warehousing, packaging, addressing, and dispatching of products that he doesn't own. And he needs to do at least two. Well, I think there's many boxes along motorways that actually are fulfillment service providers. Why is this relevant? Well, if there's no other EU entity involved in shipping of consumers products to a consumer other than the fulfillment service provider, so you as a consumer receive a parcel via a fulfillment service provider and there's no other name on it, so no EU entity, then the fulfillment service provider will be seen as the European brand. You can compare it with a store. If a store would sell white label products, then the name of the store or the name on the cash register receipt will become the brand. So what they're saying here is fulfillment service providers need to ensure that the products that they deal with, warehousing, packaging, addressing, and dispatching, are compliant, or that the parties for which they do these services ensure that they are compliant, which means an EU address on the packaging, on the product, proper manuals in proper languages. You know? New, and you know that the GPS R, the D and the R, is in a non-harmonized and a harmonized part. So this was an add-on to the 2019-10-20 when this goes live. Online marketplaces was not so specifically mentioned before. It's very relevant because online marketplaces will get obligations in making information available to consumers, as well as deal with information on recalls. Yeah. They see an online marketplace as a store, which it is. And if you buy a product in a store, there is information on the packaging that supports the consumer in making a well-informed decision. But if this information is no longer available in a web shop, then that web shop has basically, dismissing you as a consumer the right to make a well-informed decision. So the information in the web shop should match the level of information in a regular store. Makes sense, right? Also new mentioned in the GPSR is distance sales, which was also already mentioned in the 2019-10-20. Wait a moment, Casper. The European legislation has no influence on non-EU entities, correct? However, the EU can say if there's products being offered to EU consumers, we consider those products when they are underway as if they already been made available on the market. So we give those products a status, and made available on the market means as if you as a consumer are going to buy that product in a store. That means that market surveillance authorities / customs in this case can look at products being shipped from outside the EU directly to consumers in the EU in the same way as if they are in a store. That means languages, declaration of conformity, is there an EU address on it? Because market surveillance authorities will require for those parcels to have either an authorized representative or somebody as an importer. Are manuals or instructions in the language for that consumer? If not, then they can block the import. So they just address it by giving a product a certain status. They already did that in the 2019-10-20. So it was already there for harmonized goods. It's now also for non-harmonized goods. Important, it is now mandatory that companies have a process, an internal process for product safety. Obviously, ProductIP is this process. So what is your process? Well, the process has to do with sourcing, onboarding of supply chain. Is there an evaluation before you place an order? Is there an evaluation of products during an order? What if you have received them? Are you doing pre-shipment inspections randomly or not? Are you doing post-market surveillance? Are you monitoring things that happen in the market? Will these affect the way you buy the next product? That's a process. It's a circle, So in ProductIP, it's not that when we had the idea in 2007, we went to Brussels and said, we have an idea about a process. Would you make that process into legislation? That would be cool. It's different. There is legislation and we have automated that. That means also when we are reading all this new legislation, we need to rebuild sometimes our functionality. That's software as a service. That's our IT risk. But how does ProductIP work? You can create a comprehensive monitored regulatory checklist 24/7 online. And you need to do that because we will going to ask you some questions. You need to do that by answering a Q&A, but this Q&A doesn't start with legislation. It starts with something that you should understand, which is product. Once you have the requirement list, you also know what kind of evidence you need in order to be signing off on that compliance list. Most of that evidence will probably be somewhere else in the supply chain. So you start to cooperate, collect, review, organize compliance evidence. That goes all into the platform. So you can manage progress, performance of supply chain partners. And when you are on a holiday, your colleagues can pick up. You can start a file and ask for evidence, or you can ask for a complete file. This is a different philosophy. Being able to push work back into the supply chain means that you start a change. And reviewing a file is just a fraction of the work of making a file. which is a benefit, because if you need to make more files, but you cannot find the people, or you don't have the budget for more people, you better start to become more efficient. And requiring your suppliers to make a file, that efficiency has started, because now they need to look at the complete list and see, oh my God, if this is what need to be there, I need to have all the evidence. Exactly, you need to have all the evidence. If you make a file and collect information, you are making files per order. But suppliers who are making products 24/7 in a certain category, they make files for all they produce, which is much more efficient and lower in cost. Every technical file has a reorder expiry date that updates automatically. We know when those files are no longer relevant for covering the compliance of the next order based on what we know today. That means any update tomorrow might change that reorder expiry date. This we monitor also for files that you have received from suppliers. So there cannot be a discussion in the supply chain about, are we in sync with what should be there? And when required, you just clone the existing file. There will be 2 or 3 new things that you need to cover. You update it to ensure you have compliance evidence for the reorder. And if you have made files, you just share that file again with the next one in the supply chain. Sharing and receiving is for free. The advantage of this is, and 23 of you are worrying if you have internal IT capacity. I noticed that on Mentimeter. You can start today. You don't need the IT investment. We have built-in regulatory knowledge. We have support via ProductIP on all kinds of topics. If you don't have the people, you could outsource to our team. You don't need to invest. Small, medium-sized enterprise use our pay-as-you-go model. Just buy the credits needed for covering compliance for this order, and enterprise companies can profit from a subscription model. The new topic in town is, of course, CSR, ESG, sustainability topics, and we have supplier profiles. We're working on abilities to deal with that using supplier profiles as well. One of the things that is really relevant already for this regulation coming is what is called the Digital Product Passport. ProductIP is Digital Product Passport ready. We are building the future. We have launched public files, as we called it before, in November 2010. 2010, you know, to 2020, 30 years ago. Yeah. A public file is the basis for Digital Product Passport. Digital Product Passport will be a QR code on packaging, products, manuals, enabling consumers direct access to relevant information. Document and labeling. Process was required, already talked about that. Risk assessment is required. We have verified smart forms enabling you to do that. You need to consider national, international standards. It's written down as information considered to be state of the art. So it's not just EN standards or national legislation, no, especially not with non-harmonized. Non-harmonized, it could be an ISO standard, or it could be a best practice. It could be an IKEA solving some issue in the market for 26 million lamps, becoming de facto the standard solution for solving that problem with lamps. That is state of the art. So you can see that the scope that we need to look at is very, very complex. Also, what is very clear written now is you need to ensure traceability. Too many products don't have traceability. They don't have an article number. They don't have batch identification. Sometimes the batch identification is just an EN code. But the question is, if that EN code is on packaging only and consumers throw away the packaging, how can a consumer identify a product in case it's needed for a recall? That's batch identification. That's article number. Yeah. If you look at the safety gate, the EU recall websites, too many times they struggle to identify the real product. And if it's for your benefit, you know, if you don't have proper batch identification, then everything that you have produced on that article number is considered to be the same. What remains is manufacturers. Manufacturers could also be an EU brand. Name, trade name or trademark, postal address, and new, an electronic address. Remember, harmonized goods as well. So we always had the questions, can we just put our website on the product? No, not just, it is now and. Website and or email address. Or a QR code linking to that probably. Yeah? If you are a non-EU manufacturer and you use an AR, then you need to have that electronic address to the address of the AR as well. So it affects ARs as well. Electronic address it's good, it's modern. We anticipated that it perhaps would replace postal address, but now we have both. Also, in the case of consumer interaction during complaints, not only when you have a recall, but you need, as a manufacturer, which is also an EU brand, you need to enable consumers to interact with you. File complaints, they need to inform you if they had an accident or safety issues they experienced with the product. So it could be clearly marked on manual, website, telephone number, electronic address, dedicated section. You need to look at your information now, and is it clear for a consumer how to interact with you when they have experienced issues? I know there are companies that, they don't even have a phone number that you can call. What about importers? Well, importers import products from manufacturers, not in the EU. Then they also need to have their electronic address on it. But for the rest, the importer address is not new. The only new thing is electronic address. Keep documentation for 10 years, of course. Being able to share information with market surveillance authorities. Okay, so this is not just a declaration of conformity that you need to have. You need to be able to share DOC, and documents can be made available to those authorities. Yeah. 10 years. What about distributors? Distributors, don't read here logistics service providers. Distributors are companies that distribute products into the hand of consumers, retailers, e-tailers. Distributors shall verify that the manufacturer / EU brand owner, where applicable, the importer, have complied with the basic requirements. That means, are the labeling correct? Are there electronic addresses there? Is there, is there manual instructions in the language of the consumer where I'm going to sell it to? So for Belgium, Dutch, French, German, 3 languages. It makes sense that a distributor need to ensure that the products that they put in the market are matching the scope of that market. Yeah? Do you need to do that for every product? Oh, it doesn't say how, but you need to do. So you need to have a process, you need to have audits, you need to have a contract in place with your supply chain that they are taking care of certain aspects. And you need to verify if people are living up to what is being written down in contracts. Also, clearly written, what was not written before, it's not just about pre-shipment inspections. It's also monitoring if the things that you place on the market are actually in line with. Again, it's not written how, but there need to be kind of a process of post-market surveillance. You need to pick products and verify if they're still in line with documentation or spot checks on certain parts of legislation. No? The economic operator shall provide, upon request of the market surveillance authorities, documented evidence of the checks performed. Okay, so inspections, pre-shipment inspections, post-market surveillance inspections are part of technical documentation. Exactly. Traceability. This is not just adding a part number and a batch code on a product. This is also remembering from who you bought things and to whom you sold it in the B2B chain. And this is particularly, again, relevant for when you have to do a recall. And we come to that slide later. Distant sellers, not at the EU, need to have their electronic address. Non-EU manufacturers, electronic address, of course, it's relevant. As an importer, I can import products for a non-EU brand, but that non-EU brand need to have an electronic address. How much influence do you have as a European importer of American products that they put address information in line with EU legislation? That's a good question. You need to be able to allow identification of a product, means a picture, a type, other product identifier. Again, traceability requirements. If there's online sales, it's obviously for an online seller that they need to ensure that the EU consumer will get warnings and instructions in line with if they would buy a product in Europe. This is not something that market surveillance authorities in Europe can enforce, but as I told you, they declare the product as being made available on the market when they are shipped, so they can check if a consumer would receive a product that is underway, would he or she be able to understand the warnings and safety information? So it could be a ground for blocking import. Interesting, the packaging regulation will be a topic in a few more months. We need to reduce the footprint of paper. So information can be made available electronically. This is called the QR code / digital product passport. It makes sense, If consumers get used to scan a QR code on a product, knowing that this will give them access to information around the various topics, recycling information, instructions, then this makes sense. It will save a lot of paper. Now, if you run an online marketplace, or if you are selling via an online marketplace, or if you have a web shop built yourself, you need to register at the Safety Gate portal, which is the EU platform, and indicate on the portal who is your point of contact for them. Note, this register is not yet available. The reason for this is that we as European people, we know that when we start to do a recall, that there is a tremendous lag time for online sales route to get products out of their systems. And online sellers, like traditional retailers, should monitor recalls and act and take products from marketplaces. This can only be done easily when products have proper identification, pictures, traceability information. So Brussels need to upgrade the information on the Safety Gate portal. That can only be done if products do have correct traceability information. So if the traceability information is available, then online marketplaces should act according to the information that is available. Well, it's like hen and egg, what comes first? But the reason is obvious. If nobody knows anything about a product, then it's very difficult for people to recall products. So if we start to demand that we should know things about products, then we can also demand that it will be recalled faster. Single point of contact to enable consumers to communicate directly and rapidly in relation to product safety issues, which makes sense. An online marketplace, if that is a front for many other brands, then that front needs to be able to deal with consumer remarks as well. Rapidly, what is rapidly? Rapidly is considered to be within 3 working days. So response time of a market of 3 working days. If products do have information on products, when they are physical, then this information needs also to be available online. So what information do online marketplaces make available for products? The same as that is on product. Which brand, contact information, electronic address, etc., etc. Warnings, instructions, etc., etc., etc. Just look at an online marketplace page of a product as if you have a product with packaging. Can the consumer make a well-informed decision? If you are building online marketplace software, I think you have a lot to do. Having said that, if the fields are there, they are for you to fill. So you need to get the information as well. A large chapter of the General Product Safety Regulation is about recalls. Recalls, I don't know about you, but if I read some recalls, it looks like advertisement. That that is very ineffective. It's not said that it's ineffective. It's been researched and they are very ineffective. We as consumers read text and have an opinion about what we should do based on the wording that is presenting to us. So it will become a mandatory way of dealing with a recall. The headline should be product safety recall in various languages. So there'll come a table on how to do that. Description of the product, a picture, a name, a brand, an article number, or a batch. Description of the hazard in the language of the relevant member states. So these are things you need to practice and prepare. Don't practice the fire escape routes during the fire. No more recall washing. It doesn't use the word recall washing. I made that up, but it's what it says. You can no longer say this is a voluntary recall, this is a precautionary recall, this is a discretionary in rare specific situations, or although we have no reported accidents, we voluntarily recall because the market surveillance authorities blah, 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 blah. No, because this decreases consumer perception of the risk. Yeah, no more recall washing. Clear description of what actions consumers should take, instruction to stop using the product, what remedies are available, free phone number or interactive online service. Again, this is the digital part of it. They should be able to interact with you digitally, or you have a free phone number. I would choose the interactive online services. Encouragement to share information about recall if appropriate, obviously. If you know who has bought the product because you have like registered product users, then they don't need to share it because you have sent it to all. There come a mandatory template. It's not designed yet, but I've looked into the archive, ProSafe, which is the joint medium for all the market surveillance authorities in the EU countries. We have 260 market surveillance authorities or authorities in the EU countries in different topics. 2011, they already wrote down that in the corrective action guide, the link is there, and I will add it to the set of information you get, that it should be good for the EU market to have a mandatory template for recalls. That template is in Annex A, you get that document, and they also refer to what is already common practice to the Australian recall format. I put a link in there for, this is about LG batteries for last year, link to the recall digital part of that LG recall, and you will see what information is provided. That's much more than I have seen in the last years in any EU recall. So this is where we're heading for. So look at that information, then think back, do I have that information? Most likely you have it, but can you produce it again, or are you needing to round your archives to come up with that information? You need to offer the consumer remedies, at least two: repair, replacement, or money back. So they need to be offered at least two. Again, there's a lot of legal discussion about this, because in some cases you might not be able to offer a replacement of the product. So repair, I think in many cases it will become money. But Article 35 is pretty clear. Let's see what our legal friends in Europe will do, if they still be able to make the EU Commission change their mind on this. Obviously, this is about consumer rights. Consumers shall not have significant inconvenience. That makes sense. If the product is by nature not portable, the economic operator shall arrange for the collection of the product. Okay, so volume products or products that are fixed to the wall are a relative expensive recall. Yeah. This is not just about refunding. This is also about ensuring that faulty products are taken out of the market. Yeah, so it's not that people have a refrigerator that is flaky, it's too expensive to pick it up, I give you the refund for the money. So basically you have a free flaky, risky refrigerator. No. You still need to take those products out of the market. Conclusions. See, pressure cooker session, 45 minutes, almost there. There need to be a proper process within your company. It's clearly mentioned. This means also that market surveillance authorities will be able to audit companies. And during an audit, even if there's no complaints, they can just ask, how are you managing product compliance? Because they don't want that you manage compliance and accidentally have no issues. You need to be, establishing a confidence level. Quality of information, bill of material, bill of substance, supply chain details, where I buy, where I sell. The quality of information becomes more and more relevant. Software updates, critical parts. Looking at the quality of information, even in ProductIP files today, many times there's information in a file like a bill of material, but the status of the bill of material, could easily be improved by adding a document number, adding a version of a document. In general, the quality of compliance information can be improved relatively easily. The information is there. It needs to be better tied to product batches, product orders. This is work for you. Update labels, packaging, and manuals to meet the new label requirements. For example, batch coding and electronic address and QR code. Do you have space for a QR code? Don't start the change already now, because join us for the packaging compliance Tuesday in a couple of months, and then you see what will have to change more. But you can start checking, do I have space at all on my labeling and packaging manuals? And do I have space on websites? And this electronic address goes where in the next 10 years? Do I have stable URLs, or are these commercial pages that will be gone when I update my product assortment? Most likely. Yeah. Or what if I ditch that brand? Do I just switch it off, and are all the URLs gone? So you have products in the market with electronic addresses pointing to 404 pages, basically. That's why a ProductIP digital passport URL is there to stay for 10 years, as long as your technical file. Space for your QR code, very relevant. Online marketplaces, they need to start to prepare and change their formats so it can match the requirements in this new legislation, not just for non-harmonized products, also for harmonized products. It doesn't make sense that a recall procedure would be different for non-harmonized and harmonized goods. It's the same. That's why this GPSR is in both sides of the legislation. If they have the spaces available for you to add information, then you need to have that information. Yeah? So if you run a website yourself, then you need to start to make those changes yourself. If your online web shop software supplier is not going to change it, then you cannot no longer use that as a tool for a route to market. I suggest you read the materials that we will share with you and start preparing for mandatory recall templates digitally and on paper. See what information is there. See if you are be able to tag it. This could well become functionality in ProductIP as well, but having the functionality to activate a recall in a file doesn't mean that we have the information. ProductIP is not the one that creates information. We can create the fields, but you and your supply chain partner need to get the data. Yeah. So where are we in time? It's well expected that this could be enforced in 18 months after sign off. That means enforced by Q4 next year. I'm not sure about how much time you have, but you could answer this the other way around. For which season are you actually buying today? If you are already buying today for Q3 of this year, that means in 1 year time, you'll be buying for Q3 2024. You better start to act and start to prepare for those changes. Yeah. Those 18 months or 24 months or 12 months, those lag times that legislation is offering, they are there for a reason, and mostly you'll need every day. They are very tight. Many of the changes coming actually are pinned to goals of the EU in 2030. So even if they delay certain legislation introductions, they won't change their mind on having goals in 2030. The Green Deal relation for recycling products as well. Okay, so this digital product passport, I just would like you to make aware, this will become relevant for every packaging, which means every product. Every packaging? Yes, every packaging. Okay, so digital product passport is coming, definitely, because it'll be relevant for batteries or every product with a battery. Every battery? Yes, every battery. There's no escape. Reading the introduction of legislation from the EU, every time you read between the lines, nothing is voluntarily. We need to achieve goals in terms of compliant products, reduce risk, increase recycling, circular economy. It's clip and clear. There's no voluntary participation anymore. Will this change liability as well? Yes, we have a specific session, but not in this context, because liability is arranged via the Product Liability Directive. That one is 35 years old, so definitely needed some overhaul. It's pretty already signed off. Significant overhaul. We have a Compliance Tuesday event on November 21st. I can tell you already, if you have no technical documentation and a consumer has damages due to your product, no technical documentation means you are also liable. Yeah? So then you have no escape. Breaking news on this topic, just received confirmation this morning actually that Reuschel will co-host this Compliance Tuesday session with us on November 21st, which makes sense because many aspects are legal, and that is, we are not allowed as ProductIP to give legal advice, but Reuschel is allowed to give legal advice. The agenda for Compliance Tuesday for this year is pretty full, so I encourage you to check it and sign up. All those topics are relevant for you when you deal with non-food consumer goods, except perhaps machinery, not for everybody, but most of those topics are relevant for you. I encourage you also to invite supply chain partners, because you cannot manage the change only by yourself. Check your email preferences with us, stay informed, start a change, start using ProductIP, and have a good lunch later. Keep calm and stay compliant. Thanks for joining this session. We'll share with you the presentation and other information that was the basis for this, like a summary from the EU. And the session has been recorded. We'll put it live on YouTube and probably by the end of this week, early next week. All right? Enjoy your lunch. Thanks for participating. Bye-bye.